For the day. I know you're all getting a little bit tired, but Jeremiah said, can you do 15 minutes on your cool research that you're doing, and can you bring your energy? And I said, yes, I will. So hopefully I can deliver on that one. Well, maybe on the wrong monitor visually. Okay, so this is the organizational chart, and what I've come across a lot in recent months, and yeah, probably the last 12 months, is that organizations have gone and they've decided that they need an upskilling program. Thank you. They need an upskilling program, and they've researched what they need for the roles. They've looked at the job description, they've looked at the JD, and they knew exactly what they needed. They built out the program, they sent the first cohort on it. By the time the first cohort got through the program about 12 to 18 months after, what happened is that the work had moved on, and that the skills weren't exactly the ones that were required for the role because new tools had come in, especially AI tools, and the way the work is being done, the way the work flows, and everything had changed and moved on. And that's something we're seeing again and again and again, but completely on the back foot, for the obvious reasons that AI is traveling at quite a pace. But there's a huge opportunity and a huge danger in this, and that's what this is going to be about in the next 13 minutes and 38 seconds. So the biggest problem is the org chart you're building pipelines into is reorganizing itself in a layer your system can't see, because the way you're approaching this is usually the old-fashioned way. We used to be really spoiled. If someone said we need a marketing manager, we need probably 80% what that meant. The rest of the 20% was maybe the sector, the company, the role, the clients, the services. Maybe it was more than 20%, maybe it was less. Don't quote me on that. But we can say the majority we knew what we needed from a marketing manager of a certain level. And that was because we had the JD, and because that's how the world nicely worked, because we had the full chart, and that was the Lego piece that fit exactly there, and that's what we needed. The way I usually talk about this is a two-wave model, and I usually talk about the surface wave and the undercurrent. And the reason I use that is the surface wave is what AI can touch inside of every function, and every function is measured as if it works standalone. I'm already saying function here. For most organizations, this isn't even a function. Most organizations, AI means we've taught you to prompt. You're now sitting on your desktop or your laptop and you're prompting away, and then you get some kind of a result, and then you will go back to exactly the workflow that you had 5 years ago. But you will have gotten there quicker because you prompted a lot. And the email you're going to send is probably 5x as long because you never wrote it, because you prompted and someone else wrote the email. And then someone else will have to read your email or get their AI to read their email, and so we're getting a lot of what we call this swap in our organizations. And we're focusing on the individual. That's already where, in this crowd, we're starting to think, well, that can't be right, because we're talking about capability, we will have champions, we need to spread that capability, we need to get the team to be more efficient. And if we know how we're using the tools, when we're using the tools, how we do it responsibly, and what checks and balances we have in place, governance springs to mind, then we have the right approach. So that's the surface wave, that's what hits everyone. And usually we look at that in 3 categories. What work stays human-led, what work can potentially be augmented if the tools are there, and what work can potentially be automated if the tools are there and the data is right, and all of other things, theoretically. The undercurrent are the pieces we can't see. The undercurrent is how the way the work is being done is changing, how the workflows are changing, how shared responsibility is changing. All those things that we in this room have been talking about for quite some time, because we talk about how the learning translates into the work. And in that undercurrent, roles change, workflows change, everything is changing. Those are the unseens. From an HR perspective, we look at the org chart, we look at that function, we know they're struggling, and we decide that we've got a talent and hiring problem. What we can't see is that the org chart in that function is completely breaking, doesn't work anymore, the JDs don't fit the jobs, we're not evaluating people in the right way, and it's all a bit of a mismatch. So, instead of talking to people about what they think they're seeing, we've looked at some data. And TechWolf is a skills company, and they have for the last 10 years, from 2015 to 2025, they have scoured off the web 2 billion job postings. And they have taken those 2 billion job postings, and they've looked at exactly what they described that that role needs to do, and they've also tracked that over time. Because they're a skills company, they have a skills matrix, so they mapped what they saw to their skills matrix. And then they also have a task matrix, so they map the skills to the task matrix. So you end up with around 560,000 tasks. Those are the signals for this research coming from 2 billion job postings. And they didn't stop there, but they also mapped the whole piece against the Stanford University's Digital Labs Human Agency Scale. That is a really good research paper for those who haven't looked at it, that looks into, with good reasoning, around what tasks may be mainly human, what tasks could be mainly augmented, and what tasks might be automated. And once you've got that, you've got a pretty good data set of what's been happening over recent years and how things are developing. And really interestingly, from a surface wave, it's quite obvious. We know that sales needs to automate. We know that sales needs to augment. That's the surface wave. What we're not seeing is whether if other parts of the business change things, how that might impact sales, or if sales changes how they do things, how that changes other parts of the business. And if you can't find a good example now for those cross-pollinations, that's because sales and accounts, turns out, are the most isolated function we have in the modern business when I look at the traditional job families. Why? Despite them having the surface pressure for AI coming in, no one else in the business is starting to get involved in sales and accounts and in their workflows and in their tools. And sales and accounts isn't getting involved in anyone else's. That keeps them beautifully siloed, and they basically just feel surface wave pressure. Where we see the highest pressures, and here are the top 3, is in DevOps and SRE, in QA and testing, and in finance. DevOps and SRE is a really interesting one because most people think it should be software engineering because they're all vibe coding and they're producing software like there's no tomorrow, 7 to X times as much. The thing is that all reaches DevOps, and DevOps needs to deploy that piece. Now the DevOps function hasn't changed, but they can't do 7 to X times the amount of work just because software engineering is sending it their way. And they can't wait for all the other functions that also help DevOps to do their roles. So what DevOps has started to do is they've had to, in order to overcome those bottlenecks and to deliver what's coming their way, they've had to start doing things on their own that they didn't used to do on their own. DevOps is doing cybersecurity, and DevOps is doing UI UX. Why? Because otherwise they wouldn't be shipping. And none of those are traditional DevOps pieces. That's just because if they wait for everyone else to come back to them, we won't have any software shipping for weeks. And we're trying to ship at 7 to 8x the speed that we used to ship. So that is the cross-bleeding of tasks, where it becomes really complicated and people aren't just doing something on their own laptop, on their own desktop, and then being quicker, but the whole workflow is changing. So that's why DevOps is under a lot of pressure, similar QA and testing. Finance is slightly different yet again, because finance doesn't overlap quite as much as those two with the other functions. But what makes finance really specific is finance is the only traditional job family where the automated theoretical portion is bigger than the augmented. Let that sink in. The potentially automated proportion of their work is bigger than the augmented part. That means automation is coming their way like a rocket ship, and because they're already very streamlined with automation, when the pressure builds up, they haven't got much elsewhere to go. If you're augmenting a lot and you're doing a lot with human, then in those areas you can balance a little bit of pressure that's coming your way. But if it's coming brute force and you're already relying a lot on systems, that then adds a lot of additional pressure as well. I can't go into the exact calculations of how we do the undercurrent here because it's only 15 minutes, but those are the top 3. Software engineering comes 7th, and that's probably the function that is at the top of every AI steering committee's agenda. And HR, I promise you, because I read all the Deloitte and McKinsey reports where CHROs are interviewed DevOps has a hiring problem and talent. They're going to go out and hire better people that are fitter for the job. Whereas DevOps is breaking at all ends, and, sorry, you can quote me on this, the DevOps lead doesn't have the skill set to lead the DevOps function doing all these things they shouldn't be doing. And if you go and you ask the head of UI UX in that company whether DevOps should be doing their job, you'll get a very clear answer, and it's got 2 big letters. So, and then there's another thing. 14.3% of the task signals that we're seeing in these 2 billion job postings at the later end towards 2021 don't map to any traditional existing job value. That's the frontier. That's where this, what the marketing manager should be doing. This doesn't fit anymore at all. So that's how fast things are changing. 14.3%. What does that mean? Well, we're still calling the person the marketing manager who's helping everyone do prompts, builds the prompt library, shares it with the whole marketing team, and is basically responsible for prompting and efficiencies across the team. Something we would all applaud because we have capability. We would say that's fantastic, that's exactly what you should be doing. But no one's calling that person a prompt library. We're still calling them a marketing manager, and they're still in the same pool with everyone else. Same with a legal counsel who's now, because they have a little bit of background in science, maybe did a bit of programming in their life, they become the model risk auditor. They still are a legal counsel, they make a completely different job on a day-to-day basis. And then we have the operations lead that is also technical, that has started to look at governance. And they're certainly moving into an AI governance manager type role. We have seen prompt librarian and model risk auditor in the odd job description. AI governance manager we haven't yet. I promise you by the end of the year we will see that in there as well. But this brings us back to the initial problem with the 12 to 18 months that we do training programs with, where we used to say, well, a marketing manager needs this, and we know exactly what we need to do. By the time the job posting appears, and by the time we think we know what we need, and then we build it, everything is moved on very, very quickly. And that is a huge challenge. So the work is changing, the titles didn't, and now we can measure that gap. And here's the opportunity. In learning and performance, the tools are getting drastically better. And yes, we can debate that. I know adaptive learning is not there, I know performance support through chatbots is not quite thereabouts, but we can say it's made huge progress in the last 2 years and it's starting to get somewhere, and we can say, yeah, with the right content, it would be really good. So these tools are coming, and they're coming for performance support and for learning and training, at least, and especially in white collar roles. And the problem with that is that if we're not in charge of capability and in usage of AI, especially as AI penetrates the functions even more, we need to move from the individual prompting usage via a shared capability and a shared responsibility to something that might look a little bit agentic. If we skip the middle, we have no governance, we're not observing anything, and everyone's just going haywire. That's not going to go anywhere. So we need that capability piece in the middle. Who should be responsible for that capability piece? The people who worry about training and learning and performance. And unfortunately, that's the hard part of the role. We're going to have to do that job, possibly for all other functions and be on top of it with them in order to be able to deliver with them. If we don't do that, they will be running adaptive learning bots and performance support bots that we didn't procure on data that we didn't decide is the right data, and with a governance model that we were not involved in when it was decided how to set it up. The automation piece will move these kind of roles, especially in white-collar companies, out. But if we hold the capability piece, and we are on top of how roles are developing and what's happening, and we do our homework there, and we see how we move through shared capability to agentic pieces, then we're on top of it, and then we can be part of that journey and support the entire organization in that, and be more effective and efficient to close that gap from learning to the work that he's doing, which has been Jamai's thing now for several decades. And which is why she's brought us all here together to do. Now, I know that was a lot, and this can't be the whole story because this was 15 minutes. But I can share with you guys some of the research that I've been doing that you can read, and I can share with you an agentic readiness assessment that I've built, which I think is unique in the world right now. It goes really deep. It's got 60 questions across 4 pillars, and I've built it in a way, and people have already fed this back to me, that's perceived as an educational questionnaire. People say, oh my God, I'm learning so much, I'm thinking about things that I haven't thought about, and this is really helping me understand what I'm missing, and it's free. And I know you're all at a conference, and you can't do an in-depth questionnaire now, and you can't now all find the research pieces. So what I suggest you do is you scan this QR code, and you can do 2 things under this QR code. One is you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you've got any further questions, and the other one is you can put your name and email address down, and next week after the conference I'll email you the link to the free questionnaire, and then you can go and look at that if it is of interest. And that means I have to skip one slide because I ran out of time a little bit, but hopefully that was energetic, hopefully you didn't fall asleep, hopefully you agree that this is an important topic, and while we might debate around the edges, we can agree that there's something there in the middle. That means we need to get to work, and it's not as cushy anymore as it used to be when we knew exactly what